Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Uh, these holidays have been kind of throwing everything off, and the shows sometimes I don't like running shows on holidays too much because people are busy, and I want my guests to at least have a half butt chance of getting some publicity from what their work is doing, and that's the only way I can pay them. But you're listening to Dave Emmons on a strange reality show. And there's a lot of things going on. And we're going to be talking about one of the things that really hits the interest of myself and my guest. He kind of a special guest because he's been on the show several times. He's my UK buddy. And but he's also a musician. So that's something else that I'm tied to. But I know you guys seen him before and you like him. So we're going to do this show. And we're going to be talking about the latest on these drones. And we're going to be talking about the latest on disclosure, and we're going to get into that. And also, my buddy here from the UK, they've had some events too. You've seen the pictures of that big drone that's round and circular. It looks like a leaf cluster, metallic, and so they've got pictures of that. So there's things going on all over the world from what I heard. This is from an expert, and I think I'm going to run some videos and show you that after this. My special guest today, special buddy, Mark Olly from UK. He was born in 1962. Makes him younger than me, darn it. In Warrington, England, and educated at Appleton Hall County Grammar School. Warrington, that's where you learn most of your UFO stuff at the grammar school, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Warrington College of Art and Design, the University of Liverpool Institute of Extension Studies, Field Archaeology Unit, various business schools, and El Shada College of Advanced Ministry, UK, Manchester, where he obtained a Certificate of Ministry, CTMIN.AP, and Diploma of Biblical Studies, DIP.BS. AP. I guess people know what that means. For over 22 years, he has worked as a professional musician, and he's opened up for the Rolling Stones. And he made a record, I guess, last year. Well, I'll talk to him more about that. But I got into that professional musician thing really good because I was a kind of semi-pro, wasn't professional. I mean, semi-pro is a weekend warrior, and and a pro is somebody that does it for a living and all the time. And he's been a live DJ, and he's been in music management, founding Angel Harp Music, Unicorn Entertainment Agency Limited, and Legend Think Limited, one of the first multimedia companies in the world before moving on to pursue a solo career as a writer, archaeologist, and television presenter. And this career has so far taken him to all parts of the UK, France, Egypt, Norway, Italy, Bulgaria, Cyprus, South America, and Turkey and North Africa in search of the ancient and the mysterious. His hobbies include collecting antiques and geological specimens, Dark Age, Celtic, and medieval costumed reenactments, staging. They don't get cut or stabbed, do you, doing those reenactments?
But you do get injuries. You definitely get injuries if you
Yeah,
decide to go into combat. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. We use proper metal blades and stuff. Yeah,
really. Wow.
yeah, yeah.
I don't think I'd get out there. But no, I'm reading a different. I'm reading actually. This is a different bio, and I found it very curious.
Yeah.
Is that the Guild of Lifelong Learning is where I got this off the internet. I wanted to.
Ah, yeah. That's why it sounded like it was an episode of This Is Your Life. Oh,
Yeah,
it's pretty well got everything on that. I'm trying to encourage students with that one. I'm trying to get people to come on down and sign up. So you can stop there if you want because it's only
okay.
tell.
Well, yeah, we can't talk about all the titles of your books, but
No.
we talked about the UK UFO Roswell book last time you was on the show.
Yeah.
You got about what 11 or 12 books, right?
There's nine available on Amazon,
Oh, yeah,
and there's a couple of more on the way. There's a few DVDs out there if you can find them. They're probably all collector's items. Shed loads of stuff on YouTube.
yeah.
Go and check out YouTube. There's loads on there, including all the TV stuff I've done, television series, and a
Right.
few other bits and bobs. I didn't open up for the Rolling Stones, by the way. I just ended up backstage in the pub with them afterwards. But that's another story.
Oh,
That's another life, and it's
yeah.
totally off topic.
You played on the same stage though, right?
Oh, I played on the same stage the Stones have played. Yeah, I've done all that sort of stuff.
Okay, maybe you might have seen a few of their cigarette butts laying on the stage.
Well, no, the only one of them I didn't meet was Mick Jagger because he wouldn't come out the dressing room. But that's another story.
There's another story. All right, Mark Olly from the UK, an
Yeah.
geologist and a little bit of everything as I read. What's going on with you now? What's new with you? I want to ask that question first.
Well, as you know, last year I did more PowerPoint interviews, presentations, book releases than I think I've ever done in my life. I did 3 books in the space of 18 months. They're all out, so that's sort of the big. Yes, we've achieved it. We've done something. We finally got all of the visual stuff, the television stuff, what have you. All of that we finally managed to get out onto YouTube. It took 18 years to do that. One of the books I got out took 45 years to get it into print. So it's been a pretty exciting times, to be honest. A lot of promoting work there. The last project, which I've just completed, was to kit out the entire inside of a Viking longhouse that we've just built. We've built a full-sized one a little bit further down south from where I live here. So I've been doing quite a bit with that as a project. We've had a few events, and that is actually bizarrely connected into the progressive rock scene, vintage progressive rock, because there's a couple of bands attached to that project. It's essentially it's the brainchild of one of the members of the band. So Arena, Pendragon, it's got connections to Marillion. There's lots of stuff going on there. But history, reenactment, so I'm still doing that. In fact, I was there last weekend, so it's still very current. We're also kitting out an enormous Victorian manor house. It's like, I don't know, 11 bedrooms. And the last thing I got for it, which I'm chuffed to bits with, was a proper period working grandfather clock. I managed to find it in the back of this like dusty storage unit, and it's brilliant. It's perfect. So I keep finding things for that. So that's kind of an ongoing, tumbling thing. I'm writing 3 books at the moment, but I'm sort of taking a break. As you said, it's over here. It's holiday season, so we're kind of sat in the gap. Nothing happens in December at all. Not in film and television, not in writing, not in scripting. There's no commissioning. There's nothing. There's about 5 weeks when you may as well just, go on holiday. So I'm sort of taking a break, doing a bit of an audit and tidying things up at this end. But back on the job again in January with these books that are coming up.
Okay. At 3 books in 18 months is pretty good.
Yeah.
And your books are a lot bigger than my books from what I gather from the pages you write. And you're more prolific than I am. My 4th book just got published, and that's We Were Supposed to Meet. It's a sci-fi. It's about a Palladian princess and a Native American Indian guy from Earth here teaming up in a romance and also fighting the bad guys underneath the ground like the reptilians. And
Hey.
yeah, so it's romance, war, and aliens working together with humans and fighting a war. That might be going on right now. We don't know. We don't know, Mark. I guess you're ready to see some of the stuff. Let's see if this works. I
Oh,
want
okay.
to do some sharing of some of the shows that actually come across, and they, let's see, what am I getting here?
I can see where you've gone. You've gone over
Yeah,
to one side on mine.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm trying to get out of this thing here. Uh,
Oh, well, we have to say, by the way, that over here we've had a lot of extremely high winds, 90-mile-an-hour winds and
yeah,
things, and flooding,
yeah,
which has affected our technology. So, if anything does happen to go wrong during this, we had a hell of a job getting on here. Took us about half an hour to get on. So it wouldn't worry me too much if there was slight delays. Here we go.
yeah.
I think we found it.
Yeah, yeah, I found it. And let me see. I'm trying to find the right one. Let's see if this. Yeah, this is it. This will be self-explanatory, I think.
Okay.
Once I get to this, and whoops. Yep,
I think
it's a page.
I think I was
Yeah,
sent a link for this. This looks vaguely familiar.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Now we turn to a mystery in the sky in New Jersey. The FBI says it's investigating a series of possible drone flights. People on the ground across central Jersey have reported them over the past several days. Tom Hansen has more on the latest series of flights.
This is over my house right now. What is that?
That's the question on everyone's mind as this object, and at times apparent clusters of objects, hovered over northern New Jersey last night. Multiple sightings were captured on cell phone video in the evening and matched similar images seen over the last 2 weeks.
Formation.
The FBI says they are possibly drones and is asking the public for information and videos of any such activity. Local police say there's no immediate danger to the public, but they don't have an explanation for the flying objects, including reports of fixed-wing aircraft or small planes.
You can actually hear them before you see them because you hear the buzzing.
Ryan Dawson witnessed the purported drones over his neighborhood.
Suspicious to me, obviously. It's creepy. Everybody in town thinks it's creepy.
Because it seems like there's always more than one.
Along with the activity in the skies, Olivia DiMatteo says theories abound among local residents coming to her coffee shop.
The rumors have gone from Russian spies to people stalking Trump to aliens. So nobody really knows what's going on, but it's definitely concerning.
The Federal Aviation Administration has banned drones over the nearby Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster and a nearby military installation.
No one can figure out, like, why are they here?
For CBS Mornings, Tom Hansen, New York.
Yeah, that was one story. That was CBS now. That's a big station, so they're not going to
Yeah.
they're not going to peddle conspiracies, like we would think they would. So, we'll
Well, while you're finding the next one, I mean, the first comment on that is it's very similar to what's been going on pretty much all over the world. There's been those kind of things appearing. And I'm sort of in favor of the chap that said if you can hear them, then they probably are drones. But there were a couple of shots in there where you had 3 lights, 4 lights. There was one going along with the set of what appeared to be headlights, light going in front of them. They're not characteristic of normal drones.
yeah.
So it might just be a mixture, maybe a mixture of different things.
I want people to know that we're not talking crazy here. There's a lot of people
no,
believe in UFOs. That's why I'm showing these videos. And here's the next one. We'll see. We'll watch this one.
okay.
This one is extremely low. It's loud.
It's really cute.
And it's huge.
It's so big. It looks so much closer in person.
Yeah, my camera doesn't do it. Looks like a spaceship, right?
Hear that sound?
Like that doesn't look like a drone, right? That looks like a spaceship.
It's a flying triangle.
It's like a small plane. It really is like a small plane.
Somebody's adding sound effects.
Oh, don't put the sound up then.
Yeah.
I do find as a general rule that watching these with the sound off can very often help.
There's a bunch of them now. They're pointing out.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 right here.
I like that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Here's the
over we have a hill here called Winter Hill, and it's it kind of overlooks where Manchester Airport is, and that was the beginning of the flying triangles.
Yeah.
And in the 1990s, it turned out the military actually admitted they were stealth.
This is the mayor talking now.
There are hundreds. I have friends up and down the state. They're reporting down at the Jersey Shore, in southern counties, Cape May, all the way up into Sussex County. The length of the state, they're reporting that there are drones everywhere. The theories range from that it's a military exercise because President Trump flies in and out of New Jersey and has property here, to they're organized clubs who are just putting them up in the air. But the activity of the drones, the methodical scanning back and forth, gives a lot of people pause because they're not really sure what that's about. There are people that are geo tracking or something. I forget what the word is, scanning, almost like a Google Earth, but a night thing, But it's all crazy speculation in the fact that no one's provided answers.
Right. So we know that it's prompted some FBI investigations, or at least word of them.
This is very concerning.
I'm with him on that one, actually. It does sound like somebody's mapping, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But what is I mean, they're talking about these things can disappear, and they say they maneuver and travel faster than any drones that we have. And and then there was some people who claimed that a couple of these drones were shooting out a mist of some kind of mist or fog or something, and that could I don't know what it could be, chemical warfare or whatever. It's scary. And that's what somebody was saying. They said they saw one of these things eject, a mist or something. So that's scary in itself. And the military, they should know. They should know. Military base that these things are flying over. And I've been, I'm telling people now that I've been an ET guy for a long time and wrote a couple of books about it. But I'm sitting here saying, I told you so. Right, Mark?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the other side of it is if you've got these things and they're out en masse and they're out at night and they're flying in formation, then the next step is if they're injecting something, if they're letting something out. To me, that sounds either like geo mapping or geoengineering. They're either mucking about with weather patterns or whatever, or they're trying to map the surface of the Earth. The problem there might be that they might not be alien in the sense that they could all be operated by private companies. That's where I'd start. I'd start looking at who has a license to, night fly, night operate drones, who's in the geoengineering business. We know it's not a conspiracy anymore. We're allowed to say things like chemtrails and not get deplatformed because, they're there. People have admitted it. There are companies that do that. That's where I'd start to investigate, especially if they're releasing stuff. They do look like small planes. They could be modified planes. Certainly, the flying triangles, as I was saying when they were running, they are now. The military have admitted they fly them and they're stealth and they're at night. So if you get the three lights with the circle in the middle, that's a stealth drone, basically either mapping or whatever they do with them.
They call it the TR-3B, I think, our stealth that we have. But the one I saw back in 2011 was a real UFO triangle.
Well, yeah. There are things out there flying that are just far too big and far too technologically advanced. Proper, full-on Roswell type vehicles, and there's no way even if the military do have them, they're not necessarily going to admit it. There's not just the space race. There's also the terrestrial race to get craft that do things that your opposition, so to speak, can't do. That's been going on now for 90 years.
And what's interesting is that they're flying over areas that's a no-fly zone. There's a U.S. Air Force base there that they're flying over. There's two armory, storage areas where they store a lot of arms and ammunition, explosives. And then there's the President Trump's area there in New Jersey, and that's a no-fly zone. So they're flying over these no-fly zones, like saying, heck, we don't worry about you guys. We're just, So, but there's a lot of conspiracies that's coming up. But what I did there in those three, two of them were like major news places, Newsmax and CBS. And if the if the media picks it up and if they say something about it, they lie to us mostly. Our media does fake news.
Yeah, same over here.
And this isn't fake because there's people. And the other one was filmed by a private person where they said that it was flying over their house. And that's the guy I wrote. And I said, wow, just take a shotgun, and see if you can knock it down, figure out what these things are. But it's kind of scary, and it's all over the world. There's another guy that's a professional UFO guy, and he's very credible. I forget his name. Phil, it's not Phil Mantle, your publisher, and he's a great guy. But there's another guy that was Phil or something, and he said they're all over the world. They're in India, they're in Japan. He said they're in China. And he said they're in Canada, and they said they're in Europe, in the UK.
Yeah, we've got them here. I mean, good story perhaps to jump in with now. I only live 16 miles away from Manchester Airport, which is, as I've already said, it has been used in the past to launch military drone, experimental aircraft and what have you. But a couple of weeks ago, there's a guy sat there in a plane, waiting to taxi for takeoff, minding his own business, and he sees this huge blue ball, and by a ball, I mean literally a ball, come down out of the sky and sit on the runway about 100 yards away from his plane. So thankfully, he had the good sense to pull out his mobile phone and get some footage of this thing. Now, the footage is good enough for it to be enlarged. And what we seem to have is something about the size of a car cockpit. So like where the four seats are in the middle of a car, minus the boot and the bonnet, that's about the size of this object. It's a perfect sphere, and it's got almost like layers of armor or almost like leaves running over it in a very distinct constructed pattern. But the big leaf running down the front of it has a round, looks like a massive lens in it. So they've been able, on the internet, thankfully, over here in the UK, they've been able to reconstruct it. We've got some idea of what this thing looks like. It's just like a big eyeball. It's like a flying eye. But this thing came down, it sat there for a bit, and then it shot off again. It's not like anything anybody's ever seen before. And that seems to be repeated all over the place, because they're calling these things drones, but there's no sign of an operator.
Yeah.
Nobody's been caught loitering at military perimeters with one of them controls. Whatever's controlling these things is not immediately obvious. They don't pick up on radar. Whatever the system is that's being used to control them doesn't come through any of the comms systems. They're not interfering with anything. So these things are essentially invisible. It's like an invisible eye in the sky. And what they're doing, nobody knows. And they are, as you say, buzzing military installations. About 3 or 4 weeks ago when it started, people were saying, well, is it the Chinese? Is it the Russians? Where's this going? There was a sort of notional tie-in over here in the media between things sort of escalating in Europe between Russia and Ukraine. And then all of a sudden, 3 of these air bases got buzzed by these weird looking drones. I don't know is the honest answer to that one. I really don't. But the reconstruction of the Manchester one, that's well worth finding if you can find that out there on the internet.
And the propulsion systems on these things have to be like plasma. They must be running plasma propulsion.
Well, this ball, to be honest with you, if you actually see the moving footage, it just looks like anti-gravity.
Yeah.
It's not restricted in any way by anything, and there's no jets or propellers or anything. There's no visible form of propulsion, so it must be anti-gravity. It must be magnetic or electrical.
Right. When they said they called in the FBI, and then I thought, okay, the story's over. We're not going to hear anything more. They shut down everything. They find out stuff they never tell us about it. It never comes out. And that's been very, like in a lot of these serial killings and everything, they don't tell us. They don't tell us what's going on.
Well, the pilot at Manchester Airport, he stuck it on his social media, and they told him to take it down immediately.
Really?
Yeah, so it's only an accident that somebody else picked up on it and that it managed to get out there before they could contain it. But he was told the same day he put it up, he was told to take it down.
Right. The state police, I think New Jersey State Police set up a telescope, and they were looking at some of these things. And they said even when they lock on to them with their telescope, that they turn their lights off. So they have to have some kind of technology that can sense what's going on the ground. And why would they be mapping? There's a couple of people. One young lady said they seem like to be mapping, and then so did that mayor. That mayor said,
yeah. I agree with that. I think they're up to something.
Yeah. So what would they be? They're also in high population areas. New York and New Jersey are some of the highest populated states we got outside of California.
So, same here. It's cities. Manchester's an enormous city, and they have been seen at other city airports. And the military bases are, I think, the majority of them are in built-up areas.
Okay. Your thoughts, Mark. I mean, there's been people who speculate, well, it could be the Russian and the Chinese scientists who built these things. And then this person said he doesn't think that. So he said, if we don't have them, you're sure not going to have them. But there's things that's hidden from us 60 years ahead of us, you know. So,
well, looking at a lot of the footage that I have seen, some of them you can rule out as drones, some as planes, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But there's still probably quite a high percentage, probably about 30 or 40%, 40% of them that are really, really difficult to explain. What they do, how they move, the speed that they go at. And again, in particular, this blue ball thing that's sat at Manchester Airport, my sort of local one, that is a complete mystery. There is no straightforward explanation for that, other than the fact that it looks like an eyeball. So, I would say that we are most definitely being watched. We're being observed, but more specifically, perhaps, than we've been observed in the past. Who's behind it? I don't know. I've said this before in interviews. You know, it's 90 odd years since Roswell, since the Second World War. Who knows who's got what now? You know, what could you do in that time? You know,
yeah, I don't know. I can't figure it out. So I'm not so sure if somebody had a shotgun, and which would be the safest. I'm not telling people to do this, you know, just for entertainment purposes. But I told the guy on TikTok, I said if they fly that low, and if they're really low over the treetops, I said you can reach them with a shotgun. I said the shotgun's safe because you can shoot the pellets up, it'll hit the craft or maybe disable it and bring it down, and you'll have something to show the government. But if you don't want to shoot a high-powered rifle or anything like that because the bullet goes up and it must come. But with shotgun pellets, they'll just come down like rain when they're done. So I know because I had a buddy. We was out hunting one time, and he was about 200 feet away from us, and he shot up over our heads, and I guess he knew the travel of the pellets, and the pellets fell down on us, and it didn't hurt. It felt like rain, you know, a little bit of rain, and he was laughing, and I said, that's kind of dangerous, man. I said, you got it right this time, but don't do it again. But so that's why I know shotgun pellets will come up and they'll just rain down. So that'd be the safest thing to use on shooting these things if they're low.
Yeah.
And I think I would probably do that. I mean, you know.
Well, from experience, from writing the Europe's Roswell book and investigating that case back from 1983, the thing that brought most of that debris down off that particular vehicle was something as innocuous as trees. It just hit trees. So these vehicles are not designed to be impacted by fairly slow moving objects. So, you know, if you could hit this thing with, you know, a high powered bow or a fishing catapult or a shotgun or forget all your high powered rifles, you know, and jet propelled missiles, they're not going to bring these things down. That's not going to make any difference. If you could hit them with something that's relatively low velocity, I think you're absolutely right. You know, these things could get tangled up in power lines, or you could catch one in a fishing net. You know, that kind of really primitive technology is going to have an effect. But if you decide you're going to attack, well, you know, with laser guided missiles, they'll just disappear. They'll vanish. They'll zip out of the area and be gone, you know, because that's how they're designed.
You got to be careful what kind of weapon you use. You can't.
Oh, yeah.
You can't use a missile because if a missile goes up, it's got to come down too, you know. So bingo, you know, you can't. That's why they went out with choppers. I think they might have just taken the choppers out just to show people that they're doing something, and they already know.
Yeah.
They know what's going on. I think.
But if there's any really good American football players out there, you know, with a decent sized ball, if one of these things comes down low enough, just hit it with a ball.
Yeah.
You know, whack it with a baseball. That'll bring it down. Trust me, because it's low power, low impact, low power.
But I thought I'd open up the show with that and Mark. To me, it sounds exciting. It's kind of like, is disclosure coming, or are they mapping us out to destroy us? You know, I don't think so. I mean, I've been in and out with these ETs for some time, and I was telling you a story about my car a couple of weeks ago. I got in and they just lit up everywhere. It just went crazy. The lights on the mirrors were going off, and my dashboard was saying, fix this, fix that, fix this. You need to fix this. My brake was on emergency brake, and all the lights were on in the dash. The only thing that was going, the car was running and the radio was playing. So it didn't mess with those two things, but everything else was just going bonkers. I just sat there and I was just frozen for a while. I said, "What is going on?" And so something told me to drive it. So I went ahead and drove the car. And as I was driving it, it kept the speedometer needle was going crazy like this. And that was the thing that bothered me most, because what was causing that speedometer needle to do that? I don't know. I do have a digital right below it, a speedometer, but I drove it for about 10 minutes, got to my destination, and then it all stopped. So that voice that was telling me to drive the car, it'll stop. Something was messing with me. And now also they're talking about these drones. And the reason why I brought up the car thing is that the drones can do the same thing with people's cars. They can actually change their time. Their time will change, and the things in their cars will be, magnetically affected by whatever is above them with these drones. These drones are affecting a magnetic, like speedometers, just like mine. So
Well,
but I didn't bring that up a while ago, but that's what several people said they witnessed.
it's almost like we're back to 1977, Close Encounters, the movie. Those ships that are shown in that, because of the nature of their propulsion, interfere with vehicles. You've got the very famous one where the car stops at the railway crossing and all the lights go out, and then the railway crossing comes down, but nothing's working.
Right.
But clearly something is interfering with electrical things at ground level. Now, I've learned that, people go, it's only fiction, it's all movies, this, that, and the other. From certain investigations, looking at certain books and a lot of the contacts I've got in the film and television industry, they do their research. Some of the things that you see, they haven't made up. They've actually stolen them from actual accounts, actual research, things that have happened to people, like the story that you've just given now. That would supply information into something that later becomes a production. So you can't just write things like that off as Hollywood fiction, because it's not. It actually happens. I had it happen. I was coming back from Hereford this week, and halfway down the journey, the car decided it was going to reboot, because it's partially electronic, partially mechanical. Unfortunately, I could just keep going, and the only thing it affected was, the sat nav and the heating system and the music system, and the whole thing went to sleep. I got the Nissan logo, and then it just came back up again. But it does make you wonder why. Why do these things do what they do? Because it wasn't any different when it came back than when it went out. Interesting as well that it's affecting your digital and electrical, but also the physical, the speedometer and what have you. It's interfering with that. That sounds more, shall we say, alien than, anything else.
Well, it doesn't have car trouble after the 10 minutes I got to my destination. The lights all went off. There wasn't any trouble lights. It wasn't no check engine, nothing. It was all clear. The car ran good. And I thought that voice was telling me right.
Yeah.
What they were doing was showing me that they're still here and they still can do things. And I have things in my house that go bump in the night too, so the paranormal things. I keep a camera on.
Well, I live in a haunted house, so anything could happen.
Yeah.
Anything could happen.
Yeah. So it's fascinating right now that things are coming out, and 50% of the people did not believe UFOs. And I think now with our government coming out and disclosing things, they just had a hearing last week, and they were talking about the Louis Alessandro. He was disclosing a lot of things right there at the, I guess it was a Senate hearing or congressional hearing. And they were telling everything about bodies and about spacecraft. And so if people don't know now that UFOs exist, they got their heads in the sand. They need to wake up and be awakened to the fact that we do have things going on around us. And right now it's speeding up for some reason. Do they know something we don't know about our world conflict that might be happening before long? I hope not, but do they know? Some people say they're leaving Earth.
at the very least, we're at the point where the authorities and the people in power, or whatever, the media, are finally catching up with the rest of the world, because the rest of us have known that to be true for years, and the evidence is there. When I put out Europe's Roswell 40 years since impact, the book, the evidence is there. We've got physical evidence. We've got the debris. We've analysed the debris. I've got it in that book that only came out last year. So why are these guys dragging their heels? Now is the time to come out and tell us the truth. Tell us what you know. Even if it's only what I would call a leveling up process, because they're only actually coming up to where we are anyway. They're sort of meeting us where we're at. Even if they don't tell us anything we don't already know, it'd be nice for them to at least confirm what we do know. I think that is a huge step forward, and we're getting there. We're definitely getting there.
I think your drone that you have in UK, and you have pictures, and people are to go to that, look it up on the internet. It's pretty neat looking. It's like I said, leaves, and it's metal, and it's a dark gray metal, and that should show that our drones here are real, because you guys got that picture there. We got video. You saw the videos.
Yeah.
Some of the better videos that I saw. And then you had the mayor talking officially, and he's got the state troopers and all of them out there, just sitting by at night with telescopes and watching things. And I don't know what the military is thinking, but I think with this could push disclosure a little bit faster.
Yeah, but they're doing the same thing they always do, though. You can see with the way they're spinning it that they've still got a get out clause, because what they're essentially saying is, if it's got propellers and it buzzes like a giant bumblebee, then quite obviously that's a drone. So that's in those reports. You've got that's our get out clause kind of thing. You can always say that they're drones. But the bits that I found fascinating were the bits where there's no noise whatsoever. They're not moving in the way a drone would move. They're the wrong size for a drone. And as you say, some of them release stuff. They've got lights in weird places. They've got headlights. They've got all sorts of things. Drones just don't have. So again, you've got this thing split down the middle, where you've got half of it is perhaps, not necessarily disinformation, but it certainly isn't anything alien. And then the other half is completely unexplainable, totally unexplainable.
Hear the noise. A couple of them sound like jet airplanes going over. Commercial.
Yeah.
I think the ETs can, they can mimic that sound, and then throw it out as like it's in frequencies from that drone, whatever it is, and they can actually mask the sound of a plane.
I mean, historically speaking, lack of sound has always been a key to it being alien.
Right.
Because historically, we haven't got any flying vehicles that don't make any sound at all. Even the supersonic and the subsonic make booms. They make noise in retrospect, or you can hear jets coming, things like that. So generally speaking, if you've got something where there's no noise at all, then that will fall into the category of unexplained. Especially, I mean, there was one bit of footage there where I think there were 5 of these things all up at once, and no noise. Again, it's that question: how do you get 5 drones up there and not having it sound like a nest of angry wasps? That's odd. That is really odd.
They've actually seen more than that, Mark.
I've seen formations. You get the sort of arrow where you've got formations, but you've got to remember now they've got the cluster programs for drones. They can put drones up and draw in the sky, jellyfish and dragons and whatever you want, because they have proximity intelligence to each other. So you can now, creatively put large numbers of these drones up. The last few Olympic Games, they've done that. And in China in particular, they had a huge dragon, enormous multicolored dragon that changed colors. And it was all made entirely up of these little tiny proximity drones. But, and this is the thing again, they make a hell of a lot of noise, and it's fairly easy to tell that they're drones, even though they're in these enormous formations. It's not difficult to make smaller formations, but if there's no noise at all, starts the alarm bells ringing. Yeah. That's not that.
I've seen these drone shows where they have 100 drones up making designs.
Yeah.
They sound like a bumblebee,
yeah.
But Here's another thing, NASA. I know you know a little bit about NASA, and we're getting into the history of UFOs, but also NASA has claimed, and they haven't admitted it, that they've seen something out deep into space that looks like a giant mothership, and people are calling it a mothership. I guess some of the people outside of the NASA calling it a mothership, and they think it could be some connection to these drones and this big mothership that's out there. And they also saw a huge, maybe an asteroid or something coming our way, and it's supposed to be here in 2035, something like that. And NASA's keeping secrets from us. And NASA, is involved in this drone thing. They probably have there in New Jersey and New York right now trying to cover this. And I know they are, because the government probably told them, get your scientific butts up here and tell us what's going on, if they don't. And I think it's just all show.
Well, I was going to say it might be the other way around. It might be a case that, somebody somewhere knows that NASA's testing all of these things, and somebody somewhere might have instructed them to create something on purpose, because this is running into something else, that hasn't arrived yet. There are plans and agendas running in the background, as to things being out in space. Well, we've got the telescope technology to see what is out beyond our atmosphere. What they are and how they operate, I don't know. I've seen some incredible images coming back of all sorts of things out there, habitable planets and, Dyson worlds, Dyson sphere type worlds, and, like 2001 A Space Odyssey, things that operate like a loop, as you say, things that could potentially be alien in terms of craft, oh, there's so much stuff up there. But the little tiny thing in the back of my mind just keeps saying, how are you ever going to prove it? Unless something comes crashing down, you're never going to know.
These ETs are smarter than we are, so they know how to do all these little secret things. But the other thing, though, too, is that there was another video of a wheel within a wheel, and about 6 orbs going around, and then you can see a solid structure like a wheel within a wheel in one of the videos that the people recorded with these drones. And they said that was an odd shaped, like a wheel in a wheel, Ezekiel, but it's kind of weird that we're getting into the history of UFOs. So I don't know how big that one was, but I should have, I think I missed that one. I should have got that video and shown it because that was really, really weird looking.
Well, that actually rings a bell. I think the main kicker there was that it was filmed by more than one person. I think there's more than one different angles of footage of that thing doing what it does. So it was clearly there, although it doesn't answer the question as to what it was.
Was that over New Jersey, New York, or UK?
I believe it was American. You're taxing my memory now because that's going back quite a way. I remember seeing the footage and thinking, there's so much. I mean, this is a warning to everybody. There's so much clever CGI out there. There's so much nonsense. There's all these AI created photographs and, flying saucers all over the place and little green men and this, that, and the other. Every now and again, you get a piece of footage that is clearly genuine. And I remember watching that one and thinking, well, there's, I think it was 3 or 4 different camera angles as it passed over this town. A bit similar to the triangle, the big lit up triangle. There's footage of that from different locations. And I remember thinking, that's definitely there, even though we can't explain what it is,
Yeah, I just found this fascinating. It's the reason why I wanted to open the show. know you would have some good feedback on this. And I'm looking at these things and thinking, okay, what are they going to tell us? When they're going to tell us? Or will they ever tell us? And you were talking about, like, you got this one thing you talk about the history of UFOs, and we can go back biblical. We can go way back Sumerian. And how far back do you go, Mark, on that? History?
Well, it depends really whether you're an alternative historian or whether you sort of toe the party line. In terms of theories, theoretically, anything that isn't human would qualify as being, quote, alien, So by definition, everything that's sort of Babylonian, Sumerian, pre-flood, all that sort of stuff. Any of that can qualify as alien, which is a little bit naughty because it demands better definition. It demands clarity. And some of these guys are just, everything's alien. Doesn't matter what it is, it's all alien. Hence the book I wrote, Crystal Skulls and Human Heads, because a lot of these enormous elongated heads, they're not aliens. They're genetically us. And they go way, way back into prehistory. You're talking about the fossil record. They've just recently unearthed a skull. I'm trying to remember where it was. I think it was out in Israel somewhere. They've just got this, what's it called, the Jahamud skull or something. They brought a load of pieces together anyway and reconstructed this skull. It's about 300,000 BC, typical sort of prehistoric fossil. Sadly, no DNA. But by the time they put the cranium together, it's big. It's got a big back end to it. Things like that. They're not, quote, aliens. They don't come from outer space. They're just a different species of us. But then,
like 450,000 years ago, the Anunnaki, I heard, tampered with our DNA and made us who we are today. But what I was going to say about the, CGI and now AI out there, and they can just about produce anything. I don't know why these people want to do that stuff, because what they're doing is they're just throwing a rotten apple into a crate of good apples.
Yeah, they're shooting themselves in the foot. It's like they're creating their own disinformation.
They're messing because the ones who investigate and study these things, like you, Mark, you junk and you say, "Oh my God!" That's why the 3 videos that I picked, there was about maybe 20 of them, but these were 3 that I thought were very real, and 2 of them was backed up by news stations, and the other one was backed up by actually you can hear the voices, you can hear them talk and say, "Wow, that looks like," and it's real. They filmed it. That was real. So what I do, and I suggest other people do, is when you go to the internet and you're researching these things, make sure that you double check and vet this picture or whatever going on, and see if you can get a hold of people that are really legitimate. And sometimes legitimate people can be fooled too. But
well, that's the same rationale that I'm going with this idea of aliens in history, because you've got that one category where, oh, bless me. Hold on. It's the first time that's ever happened.
Get a cold. Maybe
it's just, I don't know, it's just dust, I think.
Maybe your house was sprayed by one of those drones.
Yeah, maybe it's oh, there we go. Right, okay. I think I'm all right.
Okay.
It's that time of year, and it's terrible. I'll pick up in a minute. Hold on.
I got allergies too, and I've had headaches, and I don't normally have headaches. I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's the aliens.
Yeah. But over here, it's just gone freezing cold. Where I was going with that was that you've got these alternative, archaeological historian folks, and they're coming up with all this stuff. What I would heartily encourage people to do, and this kind of answers your question, the same rationale applies. Go and find the source material. What on earth did the Babylonians actually say? What did the Sumerians actually say? What did the Egyptians actually say? What is actually written in the Old Testament? Go and read what Ezekiel saw. Go and check the source material, because in the same way that you would formulate your own opinion, say, of a piece of footage, archaeologically, you can formulate your own opinion of a piece of historical information. Recently there's been a lot of excitement about some hieroglyphs, pharaonic hieroglyphs that were decoded, I think about 1760 BC-ish, something in that kind of period. And it talks about a pharaoh watching UFOs in the sky. Wow. It's a witness statement from ancient Egypt.
I saw the hieroglyphs. We're talking about the history of UFOs, and which we know goes way back. Maybe. Yeah.
Well, it's not the ones you've seen. You'll have seen the hieroglyphs in the temple. Those are not the hieroglyphs. This is an actual account written in hieroglyphics by a pharaoh at the time, and it's an eyewitness report. I'm sure if people search out there, you'll find it. But the text is real. That's the thing. You've got the source material. So Yes, historically, UFOs, they go back a long way, a very long way. Um,
Well,
I mean, I'm, I,
they say our DNA is 4.5 billion years old plus, so we come from somewhere else.
well, I was just going to get a little bit radical there anyway, and just say, if angels are not UFO, related, if angels are not aliens, if angels don't materialize from somewhere else, if they're not interdimensional beings, then what are they? It's like it's a semantics, they call it. It's a play on words. Hats off to Eric von Daniken for pointing this out. Chariot of the Gods. What response would our particular species of Homo sapien, what response would we have to beings from elsewhere? Well, yeah, clearly some of those responses have been written down in history, and I personally don't have a problem with that. We're never, ever going to be able to comprehend God. That's an alien that's far, far beyond us in every way possible. But there are other beings that sort of fall in the gods category, that perhaps we can interact with and we can comprehend, good, evil, neutral, whatever,
Well,
and
the Anunnaki were huge. They were you could see them on the hieroglyphs, and they're humans standing next to them. But also the Anunnaki, their king of the Anunnakis or the ruler of the Anunnakis that were there, they mess with our DNA, and he said that we're gonna pay a price by the Creator. So
you've just got to be really careful because and this will annoy the hell out of everybody. But in the past, the size of the person shown only tells you how important that person was. So the more important you are, the bigger you are. The easiest way to see that is have a look at any statue of a pharaoh with the queen of the early dynasties, and you've got this socking great big pharaoh, and the queen only comes up to the guy's knee because it's all about position and power. But you've got to take that into consideration. However, I'm not disagreeing that the Anakim, the giants, the ancient ones of old, yes, they're out there. It's just people fudge it. If you don't know anything about your archaeology and your history, people tend to fudge it. Back to what I was saying about some of the slightly more naughty alternative archaeology and history people, they pull all these different things in. But, when you actually go and have a look, a lot of it disappears. It turns to dust. It becomes smoke and mirrors. So anybody that wants to have a look at that, I would say go and dig out your source material, which is what I tend to do. I tend to get swamped in source material.
I want to ask you a question, and this goes into the the mysterious Bible.
Yeah.
Anunnaki, when they prayed to their king of the Anunnakan, whatever they want to call him, and or the high priest or whatever, and they called him Amen. Is that true? Was he called Amen?
No. There's if you really want a sort of super duper thing to go digging into, if you go through the ancient Old Testament Hebrew, the key to it is El, because El is a prefix to what God gives as identity. It's neutral, but you'll always find El with something after it. So El Elohim, El Shaddai, El Nisai. But it'll have El in front of it, and it's all Old Testament. It's the early identity for the Almighty, whatever the Almighty is. And if you dig into that one, if you go down that particular rabbit hole, it's fabulous. What I find great about it is that it's neutral. It's not male, it's not female, it's neutral. It's, all encompassing. It's something else. You can all have arguments and rows over whether God's male or female or neither or whatever. But certainly in the Old Testament, it's a neutral statement. Then the labels, like, Anunnaki, etc., all those sort of things, Anakim, Nephilim, all those, they all have their own sets of meanings as beings, existent, created beings of one form or another. Amen, just literally, generally, it's translated as I agree or let it be so. It's an affirmative statement. And I think it's more Greek than it is Hebrew.
Is it? It's not a sound like they make this amen.
Well, there are sounds. I mean, now you're getting really mysterious Bible, because there are in Hebrew magic and in things like the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library, there are prayers based on vowels, because the Hebrew lettering system doesn't have vowels. When they write it, it's the vowels are left out. They've added the vowels back in, but the vowels are regarded as a separate form of magical utterance. Certainly, either side of the BC AD period, they sit there, so they are significant. And again, that is another rabbit hole folks can go down. It's profitable. It's a profitable avenue of research.
Right. I think a lot of people are saying, there's a threat of the Third World War coming, and Europe is, and us, I guess, President Biden sent those long-range missiles over to Ukraine, and Putin is all pissed off, and so, but he said 6 months ago, he said he'd never start a nuclear war because he said there's no winner. So what he's doing now, when he threatens nuclear war, he's just huffing and puffing. But people are afraid of a third world war. It could be even more conventional. People are afraid to use the atom bomb, but they might be more conventional fighting like they have been in Ukraine and in Israel.
Well, there's two really good points there. Point number one is there's no point fighting over something if you've just destroyed it. So absolutely no point whatsoever. I mean, Putin's not stupid. I find him sort of okay as world dictators go. He's not the worst of the worst. He's certainly not the worst we've ever had. So I think he's got a brain cell, and I don't think he's going to do that level of destruction. And the second thing is this end of the world thing. I mean, that's been going as long as we've been alive. There was when we were kids at school, there was a nuclear threat. I think you should go into the Greek meaning of that word Armageddon, because Armageddon doesn't necessarily mean the end of everything. No, it's apocalypse. Apocalypse is the word to look at, because that's what Armageddon is. It's apocalypse. So if you have a look at that word apocalypse, it can mean catastrophic spiritual transformation. So if you literally go down the meaning of the word apocalypse and you go down, that particular avenue, you'll discover that we could go through a war of a sort, that brings a lot of things to an end and changes and transformation, etc., etc., that would qualify as what we see written in the prophecies, by the Aztecs, the Mayans, Revelation, wherever you want to go. You can see that going on, but you might be looking at a transformation. That might be what we're actually looking at.
Like a reset, a spiritual reset, or
yeah.
They said we've been through it back in 2012, and you talk about Aztecs and Mayans in your discussions. The Mayans had a calendar, and that calendar was supposed to end at 2012. And I had one strange woman who contacted me on Skype, and she actually showed herself. Normally they don't, they play games.
Mm-hmm.
Showed herself, but she only viewed herself from the side. And I saw a thin cut line around her neck. I mean, real fine line. I looked at that and I said, "You got a mask on." She had a mask on. And she told me, she got pissed off at me because I said, 2012, the world didn't end. She goes, "Oh, yes, it did. Yes, it did." She said, "You just don't realize it. What was you doing in 2012? Well, I got married that year. And I said, I was kind of busy, but I said, maybe there was a reset. She said there was a reset. That's what the Mayans were calling a reset. And we're going to go through another reset coming up from what they're saying.
Okay, here we go then. Hot news. I actually went to South America, went to the Yucatan Peninsula, spent a lot of time. I've got a huge amount of time for the Mayans. They don't like the Aztecs. They're not Aztecs, so they're completely different. There's 5.4 million of them still living there, so they're quite a significant chunk of nation living on the Yucatan Peninsula. And I sat down in one of the Mayan huts with a couple of the elders, and we really knocked it around this whole thing about, are we going to, is it going to end in 2012? What's coming? Because I think it was, I can't remember exactly when I went there, 2009, 10, 11, that kind of thing. So it was imminent, it was imminent. All of them, to a man, said the same thing. They said the reason that calendar ends in 2012 is because the Spanish got here, killed us all, wiped out our culture, destroyed all our records, and stopped anybody from doing the next bit. We don't have the next cycle because our world came to an end, and that's when the calendar stops. And then we got into it a little bit more, and they were the first ones to say to me, transformation. So that's it. That's the voice of the Mayans speaking. Nothing to do with the end of the world or, asteroid impact or, all that sort of thing, huge, great, shift in the Earth's polarity or none of that. Forget all of that. That's the actual reason why the calendar doesn't carry on, because there was nobody left to carry it on by the time the Spanish had finished, and the French and the English.
The Bible and a lot of preachers have, called the end of the world so many times that it's like that way they cried wolf too many times. And so,
well, there is actually a Bible verse. Somebody asked Jesus when it's going to come to an end, and he turned around and he went, "Look, I'm the son of the Father, and I haven't got a clue. I don't know. So that's, God's going to wrap it up when he wraps it up. That's the answer. Nobody knows." So I guarantee if you sat there picking every single day, from now until whenever, it's not going to happen on that day because you're not supposed to know.
I also read, I wrote a book, Angels and Supernatural Entities, and in that it says Jesus said, they asked him when the end times would be. And he says, when the days start looking like when Noah existed.
Yeah.
That catastrophic flooding. And he says, and when the giants prevail on the land, he said, that's when the end will come. So he did allude to that. I don't know the Bible verse. I guess I should.
Oh yeah, I think it's fairly certain from biblical material that you're going to be aware of sort of the time and season, but you can't. I don't think you can pin it down to a year and a month and a day. That's impossible. Only the Almighty knows that. I don't think anybody else knows that. The thing with the Noah thing's interesting because Noah, when the flood hit Noah, his particular time period, his particular civilization, they'd had 3,000 years to get to that point. So they were by no means backward. They were super technology for that period. We've only had 2,000. We've only had 2,000 years to get to this point. So I think that's a very valid observation. I think that really is a tell.
I think with Noah and the giants, and also I heard that he did not build an ark, a boat. He built a round circular disc, and
I've seen that. Yeah,
it's submergible in water, and then he is told to get animals. But I think he didn't get animals; he got DNA samples because they were probably they were that advanced, and because his grandparent was Methuselah, and it was Enki, and then there was I guess the other one, the last one we just talked about, the book of Enoch. Yeah, the book of Enoch, 3 books, and that describes that. A lot of scientists say that actually is closer to what the story was way back then. They don't even know how many thousands of years ago that was.
Well, the book of Enoch, Moses derived his 5 books very clearly from Egyptian sources. The book of Enoch's interesting because that's Babylonian. It's coming from a different cultural background. So although it's written in a biblical style, so it kind of matches, the actual source material is different. It's the flood story, and that comes, there's 88 different flood stories all over the world from every single culture, from Eskimos to Aborigines. They've all got basically the same idea. But that particular one, the background to that, a lot of that material is Babylonian.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not doing this by calculating, but it seems like I'm going into each topic that you have here. You have about 20 topics that I guess.
Just do your favorites. You don't have to do them all.
I'm actually leading you down a rabbit hole. No, not really.
Hey.
I'm leading you from one topic to another. Now we talked about Revelations, and we talked about this again. You cover a topic, signs and symbols. What do you mean by that, Mark?
Well, that particular subject is quite interesting because all down time, there's been what would be called archetypal images that have been dropped almost like breadcrumbs, and they're so easy to miss. We don't see them, we don't understand them, or we just accept them. The first one that springs to mind, the classical one, is the caduceus, which has the two snakes wound around it, which is used now mostly for medical. I think you have it in the States. You have that as a medical symbol with the two snakes wound around it, the pole with the T. That goes all the way back to Moses in the wilderness. People were getting bitten by snakes, people were getting injured. Whatever God was said to Moses, build yourself an upright pole with bronze serpents, and anyone that gets bitten who looks at that will get healed. So that's the origin of that, and that was adopted. It's almost like a magical charm that reverses the process of what happened in the Garden of Eden when the serpents there made a mess of things. But that's the kind of background that I'm touching on. Pentagram, which is, from our viewpoint, it's the orbital operations of Venus in the sky. Hence the fact 5 points, it's regarded, in witchcraft as being female. However, if you went back 500 years, it's nothing to do with witchcraft at all. It's the 5 wounds of Christ. That's why Sir Gawain has it on his shield. He has a 5-pointed star. You got the crown of thorns, 2 nails, 2 nails. That's what it is. So it's looking into the symbols like that, because there are a lot of clues there. As an entire topic, you should sort of go away and list them all and go, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? There's a lot of them. There are a lot to go through.
A lot of the signs and symbols we see, and we're seeing a lot of things in even the Pope said we're going to be seeing a lot of supernatural things.
Yeah,
coming up now. Because
I've just heard today. This is hot news that apparently they have a door in the Vatican, and it's always kept shut. It's the door of Satan or whatever, the door of Lucifer, and they always keep it shut. For some reason, I've not quite had a chance to push into this yet, but I'm going to. They're planning to open it this Christmas.
Why do they want to let the devil out, Mark?
Well, it's only symbolic at the end, in the end, anyway, isn't it? I mean, the devil's door was always one of the side doors of a church is referred to. I think it's in the let's get this right, south. I think it's the south side door. It's always referred to as the devil's door.
If you got into those archives underneath the Vatican, Mark, it would be like a kid in a candy shop, right?
I'd just go mental. I'd go nuts. The only snag is there's about 3.5 miles of tunnels. They don't look like they do in the Da Vinci Code. You got this nice glass cabinet with everything on shelves. They don't look anything like that. They just look like they've all been dumped in this massive hangar, on metal shelving, and they just go on forever, which I think is the reason why there's not more of it doesn't get released. Because the amount of time it would take anybody to, even make the slightest impression. There's 2,000 years worth of stuff down there. But yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, if anybody out there can get me into the Vatican archive, please.
I think you go as far as a room, and then they have somebody go get you the material that you request. I think that's how they do it.
You can't kind of turn up with a library card and go browsing. I don't think they kind of like you doing that.
Yeah. The Swiss Army will have you in cuffs real quick, I think.
Yeah.
Signs and symbols. Now the signs, here's what I'm looking at. As you've been keeping up with all the earthquakes that we've been having in the States and around the world, a lot of 6.0, 7.1 earthquakes.
Yeah.
We've had 4.2s here in the Midwest, here in the States, and we're having earthquakes after earthquakes. And we're having UFOs all over the place now. You just don't see 1 or 2 in the sky and somebody takes a picture of it and it ends up in a weekly notice. This is hundreds of them. We're talking thousands of UFOs, and NASA claimed to see things out there that they have never seen before, like a planet with lights on it, like it's habitable. And also with the ones with the energy cages that they have around their planets. There's two things that are flying out there coming towards us that NASA talks about, but they don't talk about it in depth. And a lot of people guessing at it and everything. What do you see about all these signs and symbols that's going on right now, Mark?
I think in the past, I mean, this is an interesting topic and it's quite solid. I think in the past, most people have gone through sort of revelation and tried to pick out lots and lots of things that are, going to happen, this, that, and the other. I mean, the Gulf War as well, it's in Daniel. The Gulf War kind of came to an end on a particular verse in Daniel and then didn't progress any further. So people that observe these things, that really dig into prophecy, in the past, everyone's been sat there waiting for the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I've got a slightly different slant on that because I think the horsemen actually arrive one at a time and they arrive over quite a long period of time. So, for example, let's say, famine turns up. Can't remember what colour the horse is, but turns up. So you've got famine. Famine arrives, might arrive in 1970, but then it just keeps going and it keeps going. Once it's here, it's here. And it just keeps going. So then once you've got one of them running, then you add the next one to it. So let's say hypothetically, I'm not sure what order they come up in, but let's say death is the next one. So you get famine and then, 80s, 90s, maybe death pops up. And then you got two of them running. So then the next thing, couple of decades down the line, you might have war. War might turn up. So then you got three of them running. And then pestilence. Pestilence is worldwide, things going wrong, devastation, diseases, genetics, whatever. That joins them. So you're at the point where over a huge amount of time, these horsemen arrive. They don't all turn up one morning, they don't all kind of check in for breakfast. I think it runs over quite a long period of time. Once you get a grip of that, it does put a different slant on things because I don't think all the horsemen are here. I think the one that's missing, quite obviously, is death. I don't think we've had that last horseman. I don't think the angel of death has joined the party yet. But I think the others are running. I think the other three are going. There's no problem with that. So I think we're sort of heading in that direction. But I don't think we should be looking, like I say, days, weeks, months, years, decades, maybe a couple of decades. You might see something happening over a long period of time. So I think people have got the time scales a bit wrong with some of these things. And like we said earlier on, the end of the world, it's only going to be the end of the world this time round, and it's only going to be the end of the world the way it is as we know it. It's very clear if you do any kind of study of, apocalypse and things like that, end times, what have you, it's very clear there are people left at the end of it. Not everybody gets wiped out. If you follow the statistics carefully, yes, there's a huge population reduction. Who knows? Maybe it's Bill Gates. Maybe it's, I'm allowed to say vax. Maybe it's the vax. Maybe it's, who knows? Cloud seeding or food going wrong or genetics. Or there's a huge number of things, and there is some basis. There is some foundation biblically for all of those things having a mention, getting an honourable mention. But do you know what? And I'm going to end this little rant on this. At the end of the day, the only thing that can bring it all to the end properly is the thing that made it all. So, yes, we might be in for an alien visitor, and it might turn out that it's either the Almighty or a representative of the Almighty. But that's the only force that can truly wrap it all up and bring it to an end. It does.
That's what I'm afraid of, Mark, that
yeah.
Or they're closer to the creator than we are, probably because of intelligence, and they know what's going on, and they actually created us. I hate people are going to say, oh, you're blasphemy. No, scientifically said that a lot of scientists don't know any other way that our DNA could have been created because it's so complicated. And God can do that, yes, but it comes through the mind of God, or the energy that comes from Him.
Well, so that's going back to what I said earlier on. Quite clearly there is something in the universe that is far beyond us, miles beyond us. And I have no problem at all accepting that that's what made everything. You don't get order out of chaos. You get chaos out of order, but order is something that is made. It's structural, it's mathematic. It's got its signs and symbols, it's got its patterns, it's got its times. It's like somebody wound this giant clock mechanism up, and the whole thing operates the way it operates because of intelligent, creativity, creation. I don't think anything happens by accident. It's not random. You know, you can't have chaos formula. You never get anything else out of that other than chaos. So 110% with you on that one. I wouldn't say it's necessarily blasphemy. I'd say it's just semantics again. It's a matter of, what language and labels you use.
Yeah, well, religions are taught differently. They're not taught to move outside of that box. If you do, you're in trouble. And
Yeah.
I step in and out of that box a lot, but I do believe in a creator and a source. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a God. But as we get into this, and I guess I'm going to throw this last one at you. Since we're going in order of things, you have a topic here, blowing the lid off of reality. Are we a matrix, and do we just go from 3D and then we go to 5D, Mark?
Wow, how long have you got? When I was producing the book Europe's Roswell, I'm going to sneeze again. I knew I shouldn't have touched my nose. I think it might be the dust. I was moving stuff around earlier on.
Got a kitty cat there?
No, I think he's gone out actually. He was here. Normally he wanders across. Hold on. Well, that's better. When I was doing the book Europe's Roswell, it raised a lot of questions. How do things disappear and reappear, and where do things come from? I got into a lot of conversations with a lot of different people. And certainly over the last couple of years, it became apparent that people with different specializations were reporting the same phenomena. So I'll give you an example, okay? Somebody encounters a grey, an alien, and it appears in front of them. Nobody knows where it comes from. It generates certain feelings. It has a certain approach. It can perhaps communicate with you telepathically, and then it either gets in its ship and disappears, or you have no idea where it's gone, but sooner or later the story comes to an end and it's gone. Okay, that might be somebody whose speciality is looking at UFOs and aliens. You talk to somebody then who's dealing with Bigfoot, and exactly the same thing I've just said applies to Bigfoot. They meet it in the woods. They've no idea where it comes from. Very often the tracks it leaves will go across mud and then just vanish as if it's disappeared into thin air. Nobody seems to be able to nail any of these down. You know, there's a lack of physical evidence for these things, and it generates the same kind of feelings. And then, okay, that's your Bigfoot hunters. But then what about ghosts? You know, you get into the ghost hunting realm. What I've just said again, both of those things apply the same to ghosts. They come out of nowhere. They appear out of nowhere. They produce light. They can do things. It's a phenomenon. And when you get to the end of it, you know, they generate all these feelings. Sometimes they even communicate. Then they disappear. Right. And now you're into the Skinwalker Ranch territory, where you're almost looking at different frequencies. Are these things coming from portals? Do they operate on different wavelengths? Are we seeing a light phenomena? Is it a case of time and space? You know, are they just coming through because they can do something that we can't? Are we not perceiving them properly? So this is what got me into this idea of blowing the lid off reality. Maybe, you know, Einstein, Tesla, Hawking, you know, you name it. They all have the same idea that things are not as we see them. Because we're trapped. We're trapped in a tiny little spectrum. You know, the Richard of York gave Battle in Vain, you know, red, orange, yellow, indigo, you know, the color spectrum. That's it. And you've only got, you know, sight, smell, taste, hearing, and this. This is all you've got. And it's a tiny, tiny percentage of what's actually going on. The invisible spectrum, your radio waves, your electrical waves, your gravitational waves, the light we don't see, the sounds we don't hear. You know, a good example I always give is, you know, you get like 4 cats, because you mentioned cats. You get 4 cats sat in a room, they're all staring at the same spot on the ceiling, and there's nothing there. And you're thinking, you know, what on earth can they see that I can't see? You know, dogs do it, you know, because they can hear higher frequency. You know, somebody blows a dog whistle, 25 dogs in a field all disappear off in the same direction, and you're just left stood there wondering what on earth just happened. That's the reality.
Now, you're not talking about politics, are you?
No, you just need to find one whistleblower and the entire place disappears, you know.
We got some in Washington D.C., but I don't know how far they're getting with this disclosure thing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though, too. We talk about this matrix, and everything is a quantum type, theory. They show these videos of these planes or animals stuck, in midair, not moving, and they show
Yeah.
cats or dogs just stuck right where they're at, and they're not moving. Do you believe any of those videos? Is it a matrix glitch or something, Mark?
Wow. I know they're very popular, and I know they appear a lot when they happen. They appear a lot on the internet. I'm still to meet anybody that has happened to and speak to a credible witness. I'm also yet to meet a number of witnesses. So I do wonder if that is some kind of, CGI AI type trick that they're doing there, as clickbait, just to get more people to, go and have a look, sort of thing. There are things happening, don't get me wrong, there are things happening in reality, our world, that are entirely unexplainable. And a lot of what we see on programs like Skinwalker Ranch and a lot of the ghost hunting shows, and yeah, I know they all have this disclaimer, and they say, well, this is all purely for entertainment, but some of those things do happen. I mean, you live, in a spirit world. I live in a spirit world, haunted houses, etc. There are so many things going on that are not explainable. I think like 30 or 40 years ago, if somebody had come along, and had a conversation about my house is haunted, I think the whole place would have fallen in barrels of laughter, in disbelief. Now it's a different situation. This is the blowing the lid off reality bit. People now have got a grip on the fact that we're only living in this tiny percentage, matrix or no matrix. We're only in like the top left-hand corner of it, we're only in a tiny bit of it.
And we live in just the present. The other thing, these glitches in the matrix and these people film their dogs or cats being stuck in one position, you never notice them going up to that dog or cat and talking to them or going near them and touching them and seeing what's going on. They don't do that because what they've done, they've frozen the picture and they're just, and they're talking behind it, narrating it behind it. So I think that's a fallacy. But the airplanes is the same thing. They just freeze the picture and everything around them they're traveling, and they'd put that picture in there. But yeah, that's CGI. But I'm talking to a guy tonight. I got another interview back to back, and he's Troy Anderson. He's a writer, and he was, I guess, almost up for a laureate award. And
wow,
he's great guy. He's a Christian guy. He talks about ETs, but he's also got a book out. It's called The Trump Code. And we will be talking about that tonight. And I talked to him here about a month ago, and we had a first interview, and he's coming back for a second. But he doesn't even have to finish a book, and the publisher gives him, big. He's a really smart guy, really good.
I need his publisher. I need his publisher.
But he's got a big name, and you got a bigger name than me. I couldn't get with his publisher, that's for sure. But he talks about the Trump Code, and he talks about Trump being a time traveler. And there's a book written in 1892 by a guy named Lockwood. I don't know his full name, but the title of the book is Baron Trump and His Travels.
Yes.
You heard of that?
Yes.
And they said his father becomes president, and he owns a tower in a big city. Well, guess what? Tower in New York. Now, time travel. What do you think? Trump usually says things and they come true. He knows something.
Well, if as you well know, if you want to know what's going to happen tomorrow, you just watch The Simpsons, don't you? Because The Simpsons have got it right so many times. And again, back to Hollywood, and the movies and what have you. Time is an interesting creation because it is a construct that has been put together by mankind. And it hasn't always run the way it's running now. Anybody that goes and has a look at how calendars and time has been calculated over centuries, honestly, we're in a completely different world. It's not always been the way it is now. Again, a lot of the top scientists have said It's not linear. It doesn't go in a nice straight line. It goes all over the place. So you get bits where time touch. In fact, I don't know why I've not mentioned this before. I have written the foreword to a book, a couple of 1,000-word foreword, that's called Weird Time. Now, I don't tend to advertise this book, and I should do. It's the last thing. It only came out a few months ago. So if anybody's out there looking for something purely devoted to time, it's a number of accounts and theories and exercises, and it's just called Weird Time, but it's published in America. It was a delightful book to write the forward to, and I've got a couple of my own time slips that I've put in there from life, because I've had at least 3 things, possibly 4, that have happened to me, and I don't think time's linear. I think we can. There's another very old book that was written in the 1970s. I think it was 1977, called Vertical Plane. And again, that's related to Europe's Roswell, because Gary Rowe, who did that UFO investigation, was also involved in the investigation in this book called Vertical Time. And that is where there's communications coming across the centuries via early computer technology. And again, prophecy, let's get biblical again. So many people have seen the future.
Yeah, they say when we pass on, we can choose to come back in the like an old time, like 1800s, or we can go back then and live a life through there. And right now, we're a soul, an energy in a meat suit, a body, and the body, goes dust to dust. I want to show you an idea, the concept that I was just talking.
Yeah.
Might be my next book. I don't know.
Hey,
Isn't that weird?
Shouldn't it be the hand of a grey? I would have thought it'd be the hand of a grey. I'm not a big fan of lizards.
That's a reptilian, and they were supposed to be involved in our growing up or whatever.
Yeah, generally speaking, though, they're put forward as the bad guys. The greys are the good guys, the reptilians are the bad guys. So yeah.
I made that with AI.
Yeah.
Made up. So it was just something to give me ideas about writing a book. I don't list all the chapters. I can't do it. I have to go chapter by chapter and follow the timeline that I want, and then I get these ideas. Well, all your ideas come from out here. Scientists say our brain is not where the ideas come from. It's a receiver, and everything comes from outside, the universe and the creator and the source that comes.
Don't forget, though, that DNA plays a part, because you are the sum total of everybody that's ever gone before you. Once you get that, you start discussing race memory and what does the rest of the DNA do that we don't know does things, and boy, have you got some stuff in you.
and past lives, that's where you get past lives, I guess.
Yeah, race memory. Why not? I mean, good grief, goodness only knows how many thousands of people have come together to form the person you are now. It's incredible. Yeah.
Let's get down to the bottom of time travel. Do you think the government has time travel? I heard they do, and I heard people talk about going back in time and then coming.
If somebody's got a grip on it, if somebody's actually managed to control it and work it out and knows how to do it, either A, they don't want you to know about it because they it's just a big no-no, or B, that might be something that they've got from the aliens, from the Greys. I postulate in Europe's Roswell. I say, well, what would happen if the race way back at the very beginning, call them Atlanteans, call them whatever you want, what happens if time and space didn't matter to them? And instead of these, quote, aliens that we're seeing now, people, they're coming from the future, what happens if they're not coming from the future? What happens if they're coming from the distant past? That makes more sense. That gets rid of paradox. They're not going to suddenly do something and then cease to exist. They're not going to damage anything that's coming in the future because they're already coming from the past. They're coming forward. And it may be, just to sort of bracket everything we've talked about, it may be that they're coming to Earth now because this is a really important time for us, for the planet, for everything that's happening. It also neatly explains why they would abduct people, do tests on cows, sheep, other forms of wildlife. They're taking pieces of the natural environment, and they're doing it all in a kind of a stealthy, non-interference type way. I think, even mapping. Let's go right back to where we started with these drones, mapping the surface of the planet. It sounds like they're just trying to get to grips with where we're at, where we are now. It's just a nice, neat theory that kind of, ticks every box. I think that's what we're seeing, time travelers from the distant past.
Okay, I guess we're going to close that off. It's an hour and a half. You and I can we can talk. But an hour and a half is usually where I know that a lot of people don't have time to watch I don't want to go 2 hours anymore. Do an hour and a half, but you can't get in, especially somebody like you, Mark, who's loaded with information and done so much boots on the ground research, and you've got all these books and you got all this scientific knowledge. It's hard to say, I'm going to hold Mark to just 30 minutes or to an hour. I can't do that. An hour and a half is probably very limited for you to to talk. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and you've been listening to Mark Olly is my guest and a buddy from the UK, and you've been listening to Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. And thanks to everybody that's been here on the show. We hope you enjoyed it, and keep an eye on guys because things are going on. So they're happening. Good night, everybody, or good day, good morning. And Mark, thank you so much, buddy.